Zettelkasten, permanent and or evergreen. Permanent and or evergreen. Hello everyone, my name is Al Persohn. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church or in the comments below if you wish. I'm really happy that you've come to visit with me today on this, join me on this Zettelkasten journey that I'm on. So just a bit of background. I began this a few months ago as an attempt to operate kind of a second brain to help me through some things I needed to learn, and also to be able to categorize knowledge and information in a better way. I came across the Zettelkasten method, yes, about a year ago, and I've started to put it into operation. So I'm sharing some of my journey with you and challenging you, if you're coming along, to with some of my problems and my challenges in this area. I have to say it's been one of the most valuable things that I have ever done. It's helped me to take a front of mind noise that is just really my mind's attempt to hold information and to put it in a place where I can get to it later on in a way that thinks like I think. Okay, so I use this approach now more and more in my life. Zettel is the German word for card, Kasten, box. Card in a box is what it really just refers to simply, but we're talking about how to use those cards and how they work together and so on. Now there's a question when you look at Zettelkasten resources and discussions and so on, there's a conversation around permanent and or evergreen notes. So there are different types of notes in Zettelkasten. You have fleeting notes, which are really the ones most of us begin with. I still haven't categorized a lot of my earlier fleeting notes. I need to go and do that. Don't categorize, but put them in proper order and link them. Then you have literature notes, and we've talked about that, the need to have a note that is well referenced and so on. And of course you have bridging notes, which are kind of like an index note that relates to all of those. We've talked a little bit about that. We've shown you some of the things that have been working for me. There's also now permanent and or evergreen notes. Well, what are permanent notes and what are evergreen notes? There seems to be something going on in the Zettelkasten community where people kind of get caught in semantics. I don't know sometimes, but maybe someone has stood up and said, this is how you write this kind of note, and they're not flexible or whatever. Let me just give you a simple way to interpret and to understand these, and something you might put into operation. A permanent note contains permanent facts that are still atomized, things that aren't going to change. You're going to hold them, you're going to come back to them for research purposes. I'll give you an example in a moment. Evergreen contains permanent data that is still developing. It's ongoing. That's why it's evergreen. It's always green. It's always being updated. In IT, in the documentation, you have evergreen documents or living documents, we call them, that are constantly being updated. Now, you're not talking about multi-topic notes. There's not really such a thing in Zettelkasten. Zettelkasten notes are atomized. They stay within one topic. You don't want to branch away if you can help it. You want to keep them right there. Zettelkasten notes are written by you and by me to suit you and to suit me. So you will write a note differently than I will write one. My notes won't mean a lot to you and yours won't mean a lot to me. But you're basically taking those things that they mean to you and you're using the Zettelkasten method to record them. Now I use paper because it tells me a lot about myself. It tells me about my mood and so on. Plus I can put an artifact on a piece of paper really quite easily, and just like an exclamation mark or whatever I can, But also, you might have seen this in yourself. If your handwriting varies depending on your distraction levels, you can see, well, I wasn't in a good place when I wrote this down. And that's good, or I was in a very good place when I wrote this down. Now I have a travel pack here. My wife bought me this really nice little temporary Zettelkasten box, and so I have a number of unused cards that are in it. I came back from holiday last week where I recorded a number of these. They need to be cross-linked and so on. One of them is a bridge note and so on. Now the nice thing with this here is that no matter where I am or what I'm doing, the Zettelkasten ID uses always the same approach, right? So it always is year, month, day, and then an alpha to determine which which happened, it was A as the first, B as the second, and so on for that particular day. Now, the nice thing about this is, if upon my return I start to record notes that are after this, that's okay. Because when I go back, I know exactly where to put these. Also, when I'm gathering information on a topic, I might go all the way through my box based on my bridging notes, and I find all the related cards everywhere, pull them all out, use them for a topic, use them, etc. When I'm done, I know exactly where to put them back, exactly where their ID is. So the integrity of the box is always maintained that way. Does that make sense to you? So for example, if I had any topic, and I have something in March and then something in January the next year and something in July the following year, my bridging note tells me where all those are. I can pull it out, bam, grab them, stick them back in. And that's very, very useful. Okay, so now what is a permanent note? Well, let's say that you were studying an historical individual, someone like maybe Catherine the Great in Russia. I don't have her dates in my head at all. Catherine the Great was very influential in Russian history. But let's say that you were doing some work on her and you just want to atomize her basic biological information, which is to say her mother's maiden name, her and birth date, her father's birth date, her birth date, when she was married. I think she was married. When she was married, her date of death, so on, the cities that she lived in. All this is really atomized. It's the same topic. It's the biological picture of Catherine the Great. There would be no need to make, well, depending on what you're doing, to break these apart. It's all, one line. Now, that note sits there. It's a permanent note. You can go back at any time if you're going to Russian history. You get Catherine the Great. Okay, these are her details. Is this going to change? Well, possibly. We're going to find out that she lived maybe a year longer or not, but I don't think, typically not. But really, that's well-established historical information. You could use it for the arithmetic of the Great Pyramids if you wanted, or any of these things that are pretty much settled and understood and measured, permanent notes. Now, on the other side, let's say you're studying, for example, health and fitness, and you realize that you need to take vitamin C, and vitamin C has cofactors. Need to be taken with calcium, with this or with that. And you're not particularly sure of the exact cofactors. Your knowledge of this is developing, and our overall knowledge of this is developing. So you create an evergreen note. What type of note is that? Well, it's vitamin C cofactors, okay? And you know, well, this calcium is one, and maybe zinc is another. Sorry, don't have it in my mind right now, but an example. And you just note that, and maybe a reference to that on the note so that it's right there. And then, oh, okay, I've now learned that I need to take something else. Oh, I've also now learned that this is the best way to take that. So this knowledge is developing. That's an evergreen note. Will it ever be properly established? Will we ever properly understand it? More than likely not. More than likely, well, maybe not in our lifetime, more than likely in 10 or 20 years, they'll say, hey, this is a very important cofactor to vitamin C we never really knew about. Okay, so now we've looked at permanent notes and evergreen notes. Let's just reflect. A permanent note contains information that is pretty static, not going to change. You're going to want to reference it all the time. It is still atomized. It might be references to something like an historical person, an historical event, or measurable qualities, maybe the measurable qualities of some fluid, or the measurable qualities of some vehicle, or something like that. Something that isn't really going to change over time. An evergreen note is a reflection, is a note that is still atomized. Don't get away from atomizing your notes. However, it has to do with ongoing and accumulating knowledge. Now, would you ever break apart an evergreen note? Yeah. Would you ever take either of those notes and destroy them and turn them into a different family of notes? You might have to do that. That's all fine. There's no drama doing that. We're talking about maintaining a knowledge system that works for you and that is useful for the way that you see the world. So what would you do from there, or what am I going to do? I've given this a lot of thought, and I have I have bridging notes that are marked as bridging. Just stick it on the top here, the word bridging. You see it, doesn't really matter. And I have them in a separate section in my box. And I can go to the bridging notes, and that will get me to all of my nodes. Every bridging note is a kind of a node in all of the others. I'm going to put evergreen notes at this moment and permanent notes as in the regular Zettels, just like all of the others, just wherever they appear. I think that's fine, but they will be referenced by bridging notes. So the bridging notes will maybe have an E against the line saying this is an evergreen or this is a permanent. Now I could change that. It is possible going forward with many notes that I'll get another box of evergreen notes and another one of permanents. I don't know. And again, this is all part of this whole knowledge development thing. You know, when you watch children grow and develop, you realize that the things that worked for them when they were 4 or 5 or 6 don't work anymore when they're 9 or 10 or 11, and certainly no longer work when they're teenagers. By the time they're adults, none of that stuff works. You've got to rethink it all. This is the same with any of those processes. So again, why do we use something like Zettelkasten? Why does it work so well? First and primarily, it's a way to get the Zettelkasten approach, and there's others like it, is a way to take the stuff that's in your head, whether it's fleeting or whether it's a reference to something and so on, and putting it somewhere in a way that you can relate to it later to your advantage. Will you use all of your Zettels, all of your notes? Probably not. I doubt that you will. But boy, once you realize, hey, I need to do this, you can go and grab it. As I've noted, it's not a really good time management system because it's not the way time works, but it's a very good second brain knowledge management system. Hey, I hope this worked for you. I hope this gets you thinking about how you would record permanent as opposed to ongoing information. My name is Persohn. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church or in the comments below if you like. This has been Zettelkasten, permanent and or evergreen. We will talk again later.